The monthly federal government bond issues, the equity and debt markets have been very quiet in the third quarter. Local investors' confidence remains low in equities, and a high interest rate environment weighs on new issues in the debt markets. For a review of the primary capital market in Q3 and what to expect in Q4, I speak now to Egi Akpata, head capital markets at UBA Capital. Egi, thank you so much for joining us. What's your take on what we've seen in the last quarter? It's been pretty quiet, like I mentioned there in the intro, but your thoughts about the big challenges that have caused the market to be so quiet. I think a lot of people were holding their breath and hoping that we'll have seen an IPO by now, but clearly that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, good afternoon, Wale. In terms of Q3, there's usually a flurry of activity around the end of September, simply because as far as the SEC is concerned, for most corporate issuers, their accounts are only valid for 9 months after their year end. And since most of them have a December year end, most of those accounts go stale after September.
Right.
So there are a number of issues that will close by next week. Some of them are in the market right now.
So what type of issues can we expect? Okay, bonds. Oh, you're saying bonds, like corporate bonds or subnational bonds?
Well, in terms of both, you do have at least one subnational that should close this month, and at least 3 corporates. But for the subnationals, really, their own deadline is 12 months, and normally that means December. Right. So in the Q4, you normally see a flurry of activities. I would expect to see like 2 or 3 of them close in Q4.
But what rate would the corporate issuers issue at if you're optimistic that you see about 3 before the end of the year? So I imagine that they will have to really pay a lot given where bond yields are now.
Well, I mean, I think the question is not really, I mean, I'm talking about maybe 3 of them by quarter end. Okay. But in terms of what they pay, it's a function of how much spread over federal government they pay. Over time, that spread has come down. So it's very possible that you see lower spreads over equivalent federal government bonds than you've seen in the past when some of these issues close this month.
Right. So if we move back to equities, how bullish are you about the fourth quarter? Like I mentioned, still no IPO yet. Do you think we're going to get it in the fourth quarter? I have heard about a few, some issues in the pipeline, perhaps going through regulatory approval right now.
Well, in Q4, I mean, there are a number of rights issues that will hit the market. There are 1 or 2 IPOs. Again, not the blockbuster Dangote type IPOs, but clearly there are a number of transactions that are currently in the works that will definitely close this year.
So you're optimistic we'll see an IPO this year?
Size. Possibly, but not a very big one. A lot of the very big issuers that we're still waiting for are not in a position to either come to the market, as like with the power companies, or they are not seeing the kind of valuations they want. And because of that, they are holding back till you have better valuations. Valuations not just from the point of where the index is, but really from the price earnings multiples that historically were possible, which are not possible anymore. But many issuers are waiting to see that price earnings multiple get higher than what it is now.
But many will argue, especially if you look at the consumer stocks, those multiples are very high already. We're talking Nigerian breweries, Guinness, quite a few of them are trading at pretty high multiples.
Well, you just mentioned the classic multinational companies that have very little motivation to issue any new equity in Nigeria. Right. Most of those companies were forced to list in the 70s, so they're not looking to issue new equity. That's part of the reason for the scarcity of their shares. I mean, the foreign controlling parents have over 70% of those companies, and there's just very little supply in terms of stock. So those are not where you'll see new issues from. New issues will come from Nigerian control companies. Right. And those companies are either going to be in sectors that haven't come to the market yet, like power and oil and gas, or for existing consumer type companies that are out there, they're just shopping for better pricing.